my career, I have realized that there are two kinds of coaches: the kind that makes everyone feel supported and the kind that actually makes the team win. When it comes to HR, most organizations hire the first kind and pray that they never need the second. But at some point, almost every business has a moment when the shit hits the fan. And the CHRO who only knows how to be supportive or developmental, that CHRO is not equipped for what comes next. Welcome to the channel. I am Trent Cotton, the human capitalist. I've noticed that there's a big difference between HR business practices and how business actually gets done. I've spent over 20 years in HR helping the C-suite rebuild their organization while the world around them shifted. I've designed this channel to be an intelligence briefing on the business of people. So, if you're a CEO, board member, or a CHRO looking for the signal in the noise, welcome to the channel. Now, let's get to work. All right, welcome back to the series, The 5 Mindsets of the Modern CHRO. This episode is actually going to close out the 5 mindsets. We've already covered the architect, the engineer, the scientist, and the COO, and today we're going to talk about the coach. Now, whenever I say coach, I'm not talking about the warm, supportive, let's talk about your developmental plan version. I'm talking about the hard coach, the one that the business needs whenever the roster isn't winning or the philosophy is broken and no one in the room wants to hear what needs to be said. So let's get into it. So this 5th mindset, it's different from the others. When you think about the architect and the engineer, the COO and the scientist, these all need to be developed, and for the most part, the nomenclature, they're kind of new. Whenever I say the coach, most of HR feels like, hey, I know what this one is. But the kind of coach that I'm talking about requires something much harder and much deeper. It requires courage, because the coach is the CHRO who has to completely overhaul the workforce from the bottom up and then do it in an environment where the most powerful people in the organization would prefer that you didn't. It's the mindset you activate when the talent model is broken and the leadership pipeline is behind, and someone has to say out loud what everyone privately already knows. This isn't coaching as a soft skill. This is coaching as an organizational surgery with all the resistance, discomfort, and the high stakes decision making that surgery implies. And let's face it, there is a version of HR that keeps the machine running. And then there's a version that rebuilds the machine entirely. And just so you know, based on my experience, the first version gets praise, the second version gets resistance, skepticism, and sometimes political warfare. I have the scars to prove it. For anyone that knows me, this next section is probably going to be a big surprise. I'm not a sports fan. I don't really even know a lot about sports. So whenever I'm sitting in a room and the C-suite starts using sports analogies, I start looking for subtitles. But I do love a good movie. I hope you have seen Brad Pitt in Moneyball. I've watched it about 3 times now, and I've used it several times whenever I've been coaching organizations on transformation. It's not just about baseball. It's about what happens when someone is willing to blow up conventional wisdom about how you build a team and hold that position against everyone who says that it can't be done. The movie tells the real story of the Oakland Athletics. Billy Beane is the general manager. The Yankees had $125 million to build their team, and Billy only had 41. Only 41 million. It's crazy to say, but nonetheless, I guess that's small change in baseball. Now, Billy could have patched the roster the old way. Let the scouts do what the scouts do. They trust their gut, lean on their relationships, go back to the playbook that everyone has used. But instead, Billy wanted to blow the playbook up. He partnered with Peter Brand, a Yale economics grad who evaluated players almost entirely through data. And then he built the team around a single undervalued metric: on-base percentage. Players nobody wanted, players with quirks that the scouts dismissed, players the market had decided were not worth the price. One of my favorite scenes, and it's one that I use a lot, is when all of the scouts are in the room, and it's a masterclass in what the hard coach has to face. Billy walks in, and every experienced person in that room tells him the same thing: this isn't how you build a team. And they're not stupid.
If we try to play like the Yankees in here, we will lose to the Yankees out there.
Boy, that sounds like fortune cookie wisdom to me, Billy.
No, that's just logic.
Our scouts are going to find players. Our player development's going to develop them. We're going to teach them how to play Oakland A baseball. Billy, with all due respect, we've been doing this for a long time. Why don't you just let us be responsible for replacing Giambi with who we know that can play?
They have real careers based on real expertise, and they are absolutely, completely anchored to the wrong framework. So what happens? Billy fires the head scout. And then he faces his own field manager, Art Howie, who refuses to run the lineup that Billy wants. So Billy doesn't schedule another meeting. He doesn't build a consensus. He trades away Howie's first baseman so that he has no fallback option. The old way was no longer available to him. And what happens is the team starts poorly. The critics pile on. The owner gets nervous. Billy tells him, look, let's stay the course. And eventually, the Oakland A's go on a 20-game winning streak. That is an American League record. And this is a perfect full arc example of the coach persona and the mindset that I want you to take on. You have to believe in a different way of building teams, and you have to face the scouts, the manager, and the owner. You have to make some unpopular moves, but you hold through the rough start. And you find the players that the old model discarded and put them in a position to win. And I'm not advocating that every CHRO needs to do a complete overhaul of the workforce. What I'm advocating for is a fundamental rethinking of how the organization builds and develops and deploys talent. And that requires 4 things from the CHRO that are deeply uncomfortable. All right, the first one is to name the real problem out loud. Before Beane could fix anything, he had to say clearly, in a room full of people who had built their careers on the old model, that the framework was wrong. Not the people, the framework. The Coach CHRO has to do the same. Not, we need to improve our pipeline. Not, let's look at our development programs. They need to say something along the lines of, this workforce is not built to win the game that we're trying to play. Full stop. Now, I understand that sentence ends careers. I've had to say it. I understand the weight that goes behind it, but it has also transformed organizations. The CHRO who has the coaching mindset, they know the difference between those outcomes is usually the quality of evidence, and they build it before they speak. All right, the second one is to deliver hard feedback to the most powerful people and don't flinch. Now, I wish I could give you some advice on how to do this the most diplomatic way. If you follow my content, I'm not really known for diplomacy.
Elastigirl! My God, pull yourself together! What will you do? Is this a question?
So this comes rather easy for me, but I have noticed that a lot of my CHRO peers, they struggle with this. This is the move that most CHROs avoid. Telling the business unit president that their team can't execute the strategy, or even telling the CEO that the leadership bench is years behind where it needs to be. Delivering the assessment that no one asked for and everyone needs. The coach who softens the message past the point of usefulness has done no favors to anyone. Sometimes hard feedback has to be delivered clearly, specifically, and with care. All right, number 3 is burn the ships. So, little history lesson. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great crossed into Persia. He made a decision that shocked his commanders. He ordered burn the ships. Not because he was reckless, but because he understood that as long as the retreat was an option, his army would carry that weight of possibility into every battle. So remove the ships, and the only direction is forward. Sometimes the coach mindset is a version of that move. Sometimes you've made the case, you've run the pilot, you've shown the data, and the organization still won't change. That's when you engineer conditions that make the old way completely unavailable. You restructure, you sunset the program, you make a trade that removes the fallback option, like Billy did. Not out of aggression or not out of conviction or a power move. It's because you've done the work and you know what's right and you're willing to make it irreversible. Number 4 is finding the star players that the old system left behind. Look, every organization has them. People who have been undervalued, overlooked, put in the wrong role, measured by metrics that can't capture what they're actually capable of. All of them are waiting for someone to build a system that sees what conventional wisdom has missed. That's where the coaching mindset steps in, because they want to build a talent model that finds those people. They want a model that puts them into positions to prove what the old model passed on. And look, this is not charity. It's a competitive advantage, because your competitors are still running the old playbook, paying a premium for obvious choices, while your real star players were already on the roster. So the coaching mindset runs on 4 capabilities, and all of them require a version of courage that most HR development programs just don't teach. The first capability is truth delivery without an apology. The ability to say what needs to be said to whoever needs to hear it without softening it past the point of usefulness. This isn't about being harsh or being too direct. It's about being honest and specific and direct at the moment whenever it matters the most. Capability 2 is conviction under pressure. Look, the early results of a workforce overhaul or any kind of change is never good. It's always bumpy. Again, I have the scars to prove it. Disruption usually creates short-term friction before it starts creating some long-term performance that you can actually see in the metrics. The coach who caves at the first round of resistance undoes everything. This capability is about having done enough rigorous work to know why you're right and being willing to hold that position while the rest of the room is telling you that you're wrong. Capability 3 is talent arbitrage. This is the ability to identify value the organization is just systematically mispricing. Just like financial arbitrage, finding the asset where the market has gotten wrong, talent arbitrage means building a model that surfaces capability and potential and performance that conventional talent systems have just overlooked. The CHRO, who can consistently find undervalued talent before anyone else does, isn't just a good people person. They're a strategic asset with a measurable edge, and everyone in the organization will want that person at the helm. Capability 4 is coaching upward. The hardest direction to coach is up. Coaching the CEO, the board, the executive committee, telling them that leadership team that they've built can't take the company where it needs to go. This capability is earned over time by being right consistently at every other level first. The coach mindset is not about delivering opinions. It's about delivering evidence. And going back to our story about the Oakland A's, Billy Beane didn't win the World Series that year, but he did change the game permanently. Every major league organization now uses analytics, the very analytic framework that those scouts in that room dismissed. The players that they called uncoachable became the model. The approach that they called reckless became the standard. That's what hard coaches do. They don't always get the immediate trophy, but they change what's possible and they leave the organization fundamentally better than they found it. That's the coach. And that is the 5th mindset of the modern CHRO. Not the most comfortable person in the room, but definitely the most necessary. Remember, this is part of a series. I will put the playlist at the end of the video, and I'll also drop it down in the details. Make sure that you share this with someone else in HR. And remember to invest in yourself, because no one's going to do it quite like you do.